welcome to World Insight, coming to you live from Beijing on CCTV News. I'm your host, Tian Wei. On today's program, the U.S. flew two B-1 bombers near the DPRK southern border on Tuesday, 4 days after Pyongyang's most recent nuclear test. Will the show of force convince the DPRK to rein in its nuclear ambitions, or it will raise regional tensions even further? And China's giant pandas may have been taken off from the endangered species list. But conservation experts warn the world's rarest bear is still at risk. Look at that. We begin today's show with the DPRK's latest nuclear test last Friday, which has triggered a fresh wave of global condemnation. Western powers say the test threatened regional security and are pushing for more sanctions against Pyongyang. But international sanctions haven't been working so far, and U.S. diplomatic power appears to have reached its limit. Before we turn to our panel, take a look at this report.
Another nuclear test. Last Friday, Pyongyang set off its most powerful nuclear blast to date and announced it had mastered the ability to mount a warhead on a ballistic missile. While thousands of citizens, soldiers, and high-ranking officials celebrated in Pyongyang, the international community condemned the DPRK for raising tensions on the Korean peninsula.
I condemn in the strongest possible terms the underground nuclear test by the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. This is yet another brazen breach of the resolutions of the Security Council.
South Korea has warned of serious consequences in response to Pyongyang's latest nuclear test.
I expect the South Korean government and the military to maintain a system of closer military cooperation and also maintain a retaliation readiness posture with the determination to put an end to the North Korean regime if it fires even a single nuclear missile towards our territory.
The DPRK's recent actions have pushed South Korea closer towards Washington. Earlier this year, Seoul agreed to let the U.S. install a THAAD missile system in its territory. On Tuesday, the U.S. flew two nuclear-capable B-1B bombers over South Korea in a show of force against the DPRK. The U.S. Special Representative for DPRK policy recently met with his South Korean and Japanese counterparts to discuss further international sanctions.
Say that our intention, and this is shared by the Republic of Korea, is to secure the strongest possible resolution that includes new sanctions as quickly as possible.
Previous sanctions have achieved little so far, and China has called on all sides to avoid taking steps that will increase tensions on the Korean peninsula.
Facts have repeatedly proved that only relying on sanctions cannot resolve the problem. Security concerns of the peninsula's relevant parties should and can only be resolved in the interest of all parties. The adoption of any unilateral action based on self-interest would be a dead end.
The UN Security Council will hear proposals to increase sanctions later this year. Whatever the result, there's little chance the DPRK will listen.
And for more on the topic concerning the DPRK nuclear capability, we are joined here in the Beijing studio, Mr. Yang Xiyu, Senior Research Fellow from the China Institute of International Studies. He has been very much instrumental during the six-party talks years ago. Meanwhile, from Seoul, we are having Ms. Du-Young Kim, who is a visiting Senior Fellow from the Korean Peninsula Future Forum. Joining us from Washington, D.C. in the U.S., we are having Mr. Dario Kimball, who is the Executive Director of the Arms Control Association. Welcome to the three of you on this very important topic. May I start with you, Mr. Kimball? How should we understand the nuclear capabilities of DPRK? At this moment, media reports suggest DPRK has already got the capability of producing 20 nuclear bombs. Is that true? What does that mean?
Well, North Korea's fifth nuclear test is the largest. It was probably in the range of 15 kilotons TNT equivalent. So this is the size of a nuclear bomb that destroyed Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And the North probably is now technically capable of mass producing warheads that can be loaded on short or medium-range ballistic missiles. How quickly they will do that, we don't know. They can probably produce up to 20 nuclear bombs a year if there is nothing to constrain them. So the situation is becoming much more dangerous because they are now able to deploy these warheads on missiles that can reach all of Asia.
I see. Mr. Yang, what about your assessment? According to, once again, media reports, seem to suggest that the DPRK has been enhancing materials so that it can produce nuclear weapons to make it possible. Your assessment?
Well, first of all, the latest test probably indicated that they have commanded the technology to miniaturize the nuclear warheads so that they can put on the missile. That means the mass destruction of weapon by North Korea can be deliverable. So that's really dangerous. However, it's up to regarding to the how many nuclear warheads. I'm not so pessimistic about 20, even more. Actually, I believe the number of the nuclear warheads are quite limited if they have made numerous warheads, simply because of the restraints and the limitation of their stockpile of the plutonium and the HU.
All right. After that very important technical assessment from the two of you gentlemen, let's go to Ms. Kim. Given what the other two have just said, Ms. Kim, you've been researching about the DPRK nuclear issue for a long time. Do you think it is still reversible?
Well, that entirely depends on North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's will, his political will, his strategic will to accept international economic and security guarantees in return for denuclearization. And we really won't be able to tell until we actually engage in official negotiations. But I'm part of the camp that does believe that we should at least try, that the ultimate objective should still be denuclearization, despite the fact that it may seem increasingly unrealistic and impossible. But if we do not aim for ultimate denuclearization, it can clearly lead to more serious implications in the region, especially from reactions from South Korea and Japan, and implications for the global nonproliferation regime.
I see. We have heard from political leaders from all sides, except, of course, DPRK, for complete denuclearization. And yet, let's just be frank here, Mr. Kimball, you've been doing research on this for a long time, just like the other two panelists. Is it possible, given the political guarantee that Pyongyang has been asking, given the bottom line that the U.S. government has been always repeating, which is denuclearization first, in exchange for negotiation, what do you think? Is it possible?
Well, I think it's possible to re-engage with North Korea and reach an agreement that halts their progress, that leads them to agree to halt further nuclear testing, perhaps suspend the production of material for nuclear bombs, and to halt long-range ballistic missile testing. That should be the near-term priority. The United States, for the last several years, has insisted that denuclearization be on the agenda. They want North Korea to show good faith that they are still committed to that earlier denuclearization pledge. The North, as it progresses with its nuclear and missile programs, is less and less willing to make that commitment to show that, especially if the U.S. and the ROK continue their military exercises, which very much bothers Pyongyang. So I think there is a arrangement that can be struck by both sides to resume these talks. It will take some compromise on the part of both, but I think the key here is that even though denuclearization should be the long-term goal, the near-term objective has to be to halt further progress, because that is a severe danger to Beijing, to Tokyo, Seoul, the entire region.
Okay. I don't know whether Mr. Yang would agree with Mr. Kimball, but let me ask you in another way. Mr. Kimball is looking at, rather together with Ms. Kim, the aspiration, shall we say. What can we achieve if we try really hard with all sides and they are willing to work together? But let's just look at the reality now. The reality is the fifth nuclear test coming from DPRK. The reality is the General Assembly of the United Nations likely to meet very soon next week, and likely to be more sanctions pushed by Washington, South Korea, and also Japan against DPRK. The reality is China and South Korea disagree together with the United States on the issue of that. Meanwhile, Russia was pretty much on China's side as well, because the latter two are still being threatened by that. So, given all of these quite mixed messages, is it possible what the other two have just outlined, the aspiration?
Well, the complicated situation you mentioned really make this ongoing situation more complicated. On one hand, Russia and China, they are damaged by U.S. and South Korea by SAD system, have to conduct cooperation again and continually with U.S., RK, and other for denuclearization. However, regarding to the background and the condition, I don't think the DPRK will halt their nuclearization efforts. I agree with my colleagues in Washington, D.C. Yes, first of all, we should halt or stop North Korea's nuclear efforts, including missile efforts. That's the first step.
You're talking about further nuclear efforts.
Yeah. So we should stop all they are doing, so that it's possible that for denuclearization. However, under all the situation, all indications, all factors you mentioned are contradictory.
Okay.
And we want this to stop. But many other factors encouraging or force North Korea to continue their program. So that is the contradiction we are facing. That's the challenge we are facing.
Okay, let me just move even further to the realities. Ms. Kim, at the UN General Assembly, the sanction issue is very much to be hotly debated, I'm sure. But the question is whether all sides agree eventually to a sanction or not. To what degree will that necessarily help us to denuclearize on the Korean Peninsula? Or this is only going to be a political game played by all sides just to give a temporary satisfying answer to the angers that people have toward the latest round of nuclear tests? Ms. Kim.
Well, first of all, Beijing holds the key to effective sanctions, and Beijing knows this. However, in the past, Beijing has been able to dial up and down the sanctions lever quietly to try to change North Korean behavior, but it is conventional wisdom, and we believe that Beijing will not be willing to crack down on North Korea, so to speak, the way the international community wants it to, because of Beijing's own strategic interests, and also because Beijing prefers to change North Korean behavior through dialogue and a peace treaty. Now, regarding your second point, will sanctions be the sole purpose or the only way to change North Korean behavior and solve this issue? Well, I would have to say no. Sanctions should be in place. Effective sanctions should be in place, but at the same time, we also need to find a diplomatic solution to the issue. Now, it will be difficult to engage in dialogue while Pyongyang is provoking, while Pyongyang is testing nuclear devices and missiles.
Right.
So what we need is effective diplomacy, but diplomacy backed by effective pressure. And that's the only way we can actually, and this is because we have been dealing with this issue for 20 plus years. It's not the first time. It's not a new issue. We know it's all on the table. So that is why we need that type of an approach. We also need a holistic, comprehensive approach to North Korean policy.
Mr. Yang, you need to really respond to what Ms. Kim just illustrated. Mainly, how much leverage does China have? How much willingness is China likely to exercise its leverage after this fifth nuclear test? Remember in March, China did, together with the others. Well, also later has been accused by the others of not necessarily fulfilling. But having said that, though, what is likely to be China's approach this time?
Well, I would say by this way, the so-called leverage in Chinese hand are very, very limited. In short, just economic assistances, some, for example, food, oil, and some trade exporting coal from North Korea to China, get some hard currencies. So that is the all leverage China have. Let's suppose, even if China cut off all of the items, say cut off completely the oil, completely the food aid, the key question is, should Pyongyang will change their policy going back to denuclearization? The answer is absolutely no. But the consequence is the uncertainties, great uncertainties. Say, what if the collapse of the regime? What if the collapse of the economy? What if the humanitarian crisis in North Korea? So that is the concerns by China.
Very interesting over there. Of course, we all understand that, especially the three of you who have been doing research on this for over the years, there has been a very interesting and very delicate balance, even within all of these chaos that we have seen today among all parties involved. So let me go to you, Mr. Kimball. You guys singled out China's responsibility, particularly by the Defense Secretary, Mr. Carter. And yet, U.S. flew the B-1B bombers over almost the border between DPRK and South Korea. DPRK claimed that to be bluff and reckless. And North Korea also has been asking Washington to talk directly. And North Korea has also been asking Washington to drop the so-called precondition for further negotiations. The question is, besides finger pointing by Washington, can Washington do anything else? Can new strategic thinking, given the realities, be formed, or actually be winning at least an upper hand in the Washington debate?
Well, look, I would say that what's happening right now in response to the fifth nuclear test, the United States is trying to reassure a very nervous South Korea. The B-1 bomber flyover was meant to reassure, and by the way, your report was wrong. This is not a nuclear-capable bomber, it's a conventional bomber. But this is not just a problem for Washington to solve. I have some disagreements with my government's position towards the resumption of talks. I think that it's important to begin talks without preconditions at this stage. But China must also recognize that this fifth nuclear test is a failure of Beijing's policy too. And I would disagree with my colleague in China that about the ability of China to try to influence North Korea. There is more that Beijing can do. There are loopholes in the international sanctions that can increase the leverage the international community has to bring North Korea to the table, to agree to better terms for nuclear restraint. So this is something that Washington and Beijing, Seoul governments need to work together on. They need to avoid disagreeing amongst themselves, creating divisions amongst themselves and finger pointing. This is a severe problem that is only going to get worse in the years ahead.
Okay.
This is the time to begin talks and for all sides to get much more serious about this.
May I, if I can, sir, to follow up a little bit, just to clarify your point. Are you suggesting, besides sanctions, that China and the United States can work together? There are no other policy options or preparations that Washington is doing right now?
Well, what I said is that what Washington, I think, needs to do is to express a willingness to resume negotiations on the nuclear issue without preconditions. That is, they should not insist that North Korea pledge before talks that it denuclearizes. But on the other hand, China needs to work with Washington to create additional leverage for those negotiations. A new round of tougher sanctions, closing some of the sanctions loopholes is important, and the United States and China should work together to create incentives for the North to cooperate. The U.S. and ROK could put on the table the possible cancellation of the annual military exercises as a gesture of goodwill to the North.
Interesting. Let me go to Ms. Kim very briefly. We're going to have 2 minutes left for now. 1 minute, if you can, Ms. Kim. Is that possible for Seoul, given the political climate you're having right now? also the kind of source of distrust between South Korea and China when it comes to THAAD, and the suggestion coming from Mr. Kimball suggesting if the military exercises could on hold for the future just to show a gesture to Pyongyang?
Well, I would have to say no. South Korea will not be able to, and the U.S. together, be able to cancel joint military drills or put that on the table because Pyongyang knows these drills, these joint drills, are defensive in nature, and we've actually tried that before in the early 90s. We have tried canceling Team Spirit for 1 year, and that did not work either. So I cannot imagine a situation where the U.S. and South Korea will put joint drills on the table. Now, going forward, we still, again, I do agree with Daryl Kimball in Washington that in the near term we must negotiate for a cap, a halt in nuclear and missile development. But at the same time, as I said before, the end goal really still needs to be denuclearization, because we will have bigger headaches and bigger problems if we do not try to aim for that ultimate goal.
Okay, I'm so sorry, Mr. Yang. I only give you 45 seconds, if you can, to wrap it up. There's trust issues among the 5 parties of the 6-party talks. There is the ongoing nuclear crisis on the Korean Peninsula right now. And there are also kinds of interesting evolvement of geopolitics in the Asia-Pacific region. What can be done for the next stage? I'm confused. What about you?
For the 5 parties, try to explore an exit strategy to come after the deadlock. For U.S. DPRK, both sides should do subduction rather than addition, say reducing and stop. Military must show and try to return to the table.
All right. Well, that is all the time we have for today. I'm sure, ladies and gentlemen, our discussion will continue about this very important topic for the region and even for the rest of the world. Thank you so much for the 3 of you, Yang Xi-yu, Du Young Kim, and Daryl Kimball. Really appreciate it for being with us. Thank you. Stay with us on World Insight, coming up in our final segment. Chinese conservationists have pulled China's giant pandas from the brink of extinction. But could the species' new vulnerable conservation status hurt future preservation efforts? Panda lovers from around the world received some good news last week when the International Union for Conservation of Nature changed the status of China's giant pandas from endangered to vulnerable. That's largely thanks to conservation efforts made by China. In our panel, we will discuss the pandas' change in status and how it could affect the future conservation efforts. But first, this story.
They're fuzzy, cute, and strong. But when they're born, they look incredibly tiny and fragile. Pink, blind, and toothless, they are born premature, with an average birth weight of just 120 grams. So zookeepers have to be extremely careful.
Every day we observe the cub's mental condition, its physics and breathing condition. We take notes of all the comprehensive data to make sure they are in good condition.
China has gone to great lengths to protect its giant pandas, one of the most celebrated endangered species on Earth. But international attention could shift now that the International Union for Conservation of Nature has reclassified the panda status from endangered to vulnerable. China's wild panda population has jumped over 15%, from less than 1,600 a decade ago to nearly 1,900 in 2014. But experts warn that the good news could be short-lived and urge conservation efforts to continue.
This is still not a massive population that's completely safe forever. It's the beginnings of really, really good work, but it's got to carry on.
China has expressed concern that the IUCN's downgrading of the panda's conservation status could threaten funding and international support. The giant panda's natural bamboo habitat faces serious threats from mining and construction projects, as well as from global warming. Protecting the giant panda's living ecosystem will require long-term effort.
On the one hand, the giant panda's population has grown steadily. But on the other hand, we see that the giant panda's entire ecosystem and habitat is still being threatened.
Many challenges still lie ahead, but for now, panda lovers can breathe a sigh of relief as these fuzzy creatures are no longer on the verge of extinction. The new status is a good signal that conservation efforts really work. But pandas are still a vulnerable species that require continued care and protection.
And for more on panda conservation efforts, we are joined in our Beijing studio, Mr. Zhao Ronghua, who is the country director of World Animal Protection in China, and also Mr. Zhu Chunchuan, who is the country representative of China Office of the International Union for Conservation of Nature and Nature Resources. Meanwhile, joining us from Chicago in the United States, Mr. Andrew Weltzler, who is the Deputy Chief Program Officer at the Natural Resources Defense Council. Gentlemen, welcome to our program. Great congratulations that the giant panda has already been erased from the endangered species list, but there's still concern. Mr. Weltzler, the Chinese Ministry of Forestry had been warned that a giant panda is still in danger in a way because it used the word, quote, under threat. So what do you make of this extinction?
Well, there's no doubt there's good news for the giant panda. There's been considerable progress made, as your story laid out, the population, both in the population growth and in at least trying to get a handle around habitat destruction in China. But 1,900 individuals is not a big number. And as the IUCN vulnerable designation indicates, it's very much a species still threatened with extinction. So there's no doubt that our efforts have to continue.
19,000 individual sounds a lot, but when you
1,900.
1,900, sorry. Sounds a lot, but when you look at the demand for the giant panda, for example, everybody wants to hug it. Of course, we shouldn't. We should let them into the wild. But anyway, they're so cute. Having said that, though, there are issues with the giant panda. For example, some experts have argued panda may always be endangered because their digestive systems and breeding habits make them very difficult to keep alive. Take a look at this. Given these difficulties, do you agree in a way that Mr. Zhao, what efforts shall we still have for the protection of giant pandas?
Well, the animal protection believe wildlife should belong to the wild. So we should protect the habitat and protect them to make sure they live in the wild. And then I think this decision of IUCN shows we can do. We can save all the endangered animals if we have done enough. So this is a very positive sign. And for the Chinese Forestry Administration's point, I think it's also very important. We should continue to protect the pandas. And the debate should focus on how to continue protect pandas.
How to protect pandas? We really need to look at how pandas are being bred and also they've been growing. Take a look at this. Probably you will have a better idea.
Pandas have extremely low birth rates, and many baby pandas die before they grow up. If a mother gives birth to twins, she may abandon one of her cubs because it is difficult for her to raise both. Pandas can only get pregnant once a year, sometimes only one day a year. Pandas eat mostly bamboo, a plant that is extremely difficult to digest. They can still taste meat, but have lost the ability to digest it.
The question is, Mr. Zhu, is this going to be temporary that we raise giant panda from the endangered species list? As situations continue to be where they are, will giant panda still maintain a momentum of growing population?
For foreseeable futures, giant panda need significant effort to protect it as growing or increase the population. So it's depend on conservation. That's is for sure. In the past decades, Chinese government and Chinese people really did a great job really to create protected area and to anti-poaching, reduce logging and so on. That's really help to recover of the population. But the conservation and the threats, they are really compete each other. If withdraw of conservation, that means the threats, the pressure will may return to endangered species.
But there has been debate, Mr. Zhao. Has the giant panda from China attracting too much attention of conservation? Has that divert too much resources from the overall protection and conservation of all the other endangered animals as well? It is not giant panda. There's also the golden monkey, for example. There's snow leopard, just to name a few, many of them. So is it fair?
Yes, I think the pandas has a lot of attention, draws a lot of attention. So this IUCN thing is a very good signal. First, it sends a signal to the world that protect endangered species is possible. So pandas can be saved, other endangered species can be saved. This is a very good positive sign. Another is it slowly moves the attention from pandas a little bit to other wild animals. So come back to my point before. When we want to protect the wild animals, we should protect the whole habitat and see them as a part of biological chain. If we protect the whole biological chain, protect the whole environment, that means animals is in the animals' best interest. Because when animals live in the wild, they are the happiest.
Right. But Mr. Welzer, is it realistic? I mean, we understand the damage to the environment, to the nature has already been done. And there has to be a starting point from which that we can all concerted our efforts together to work on the repair of these systems. Is giant panda a great beginning? Is that beginning likely to continue even after the giant panda is being erased from the endangered species list? Will other animals take the place of the giant panda as it was on the endangered species? Will that concerted efforts continue?
Well, I certainly hope it will continue, and I think there's every reason to believe it will. As your speakers pointed out, being classified as vulnerable does not mean that giant pandas aren't still threatened. They are. It just means that good progress has been made. And as you pointed out, China has so many magnificent species that it should be working to conserve, like the snow leopard and the golden monkey. The key is preserving habitat, as your last speaker said. And by preserving habitat, we preserve people's air, we preserve their water, we provide opportunities for tourism. So I have every reason to believe that these strong conservation efforts made by China will continue.
Giant panda, Mr. Zhu, has attracted so much attention for many reasons. One of the reasons is China really regards giant panda, and the world as well, as a symbol of China already. And therefore it carries also a lot of social and political meanings with it. Therefore, protecting giant panda has become something very special. But will other animals also carry the same different kinds of weights as the giant panda? And will they also work as the clue for overall preservation of the habitat, of the environment, and also of the endangered nature that we're having?
Now, actually, giant panda is a lovely animal. And even though it's white and black, it's very simple but very attract people. So it looks very cute. And very lovely. That's people not only Chinese people, also all around the world.
Just to think about it already make us laugh in a way.
Yes, it looks very lazy, but very moving very fast and flexible. So that's the reason why people like panda. And also panda it was a rare and endemic species, only distributed in China. So only found at this moment in China, Sichuan, Shanxi, and Gansu provinces, but not found anywhere else in the world. So, that's in the past decades. It's been become a iconic species and being promoted not only in China and also being exhibited around of the world. So in the zone of London, in Atlanta, and in Tokyo or many other places, people love panda. So that's because as very good example, people and the relationship.
But the question
with
is, will other animals also work miraculously just as the giant panda did?
may or may not. For example, like dolphins, also very lovely, like the Baiji dolphin and the Yangtze purpose, Felis purpose, and also the marine dolphins is always lovely, and in the freshwater animals may not as like a giant panda so easy to be tangible or visible.
I have to throw that question to you, Mr. Zhao. Obviously, there are a lot of question marks coming from Mr. Zhu. What do you make of the questions he has asked? Will other animals likely to keep on bring our efforts together to bring more our environment back to where it is?
Yes, if we see wild animals as part of a biological chain, then if we protect the whole habitat, the whole environment, that means a group of the wild animals benefit from it, but not only one.
Yes, well, I understand your argument, but the question is, of course, as environmentalists as you are, you would love everybody to make the utmost effort as the only priority to protect the wild habitat. And yet, the realities we have to face, different kinds of social groups, they have different priorities. And if you bring their attentions together, that's likely to achieve what you have just said. But if you cannot have a rallying animal or cause, it is not likely to happen. So the question is, where should we start now? As the giant panda has already been erased from the endangered species list, are other animals going to be as attractive and eye-catching as the giant panda for everyone to work on it? That is the question.
Yes. If we say we value animals as part of a whole biological chain,
everybody would say that, but when it comes to reality choices, it might not be the case.
Yeah.
So I'm asking you a reality check question. Is it going to be enough if we have other animals?
That would be a very challenging question.
It is a challenging question. Then let me turn to Mr. Wexler. I'll let you to think about that, Mr. Wexler. Political correct questions, we all have answers. But the question is, what about reality? When it comes to the hard choices in realities, Mr. Wexler.
Well, China is blessed with incredible biodiversity, so even though giant panda conservation efforts will continue, I don't have any doubt that there are many, many incredibly, we call them in the United States, charismatic animals that people will rally around as a symbol, as you suggest, to protect their environment and natural habitats. We've already mentioned a number here, the Yangtze River porpoise, the snow leopard, the golden monkey. China has incredibly beautiful birds and other natural wonders when it comes to its wildlife. So I think that there are plenty of choices to be made to get people's attention and educate them about the importance of preserving the environment and habitat.
There has been a lot of debate also, Mr. Zhu, how to protect these wild animals. Of course, exhibit them in the zoos around the world is one way for real people to get closer to these animals, develop a relationship, a close feeling to it, and therefore they would work for the cause. But at the same time, environmentalists have been against this kind of practices as well, given the fact that the animals should be in the wild. What do you make of the hard, once again, policy choices we have to face now?
For the wild animal conservation, we need to put the highest priority to protect the habitat in the wild and the population. So that's the first priority for sure. And that's why the great effort being invested in the wild protection. For example, create protected area. For instance, in the last 10 years, the giant panda protected area increased near 70%. So that's a significant increase. So a great effort into the wild, but the awareness, people learn and to understand, to become live animals, I think that's also very important.
All right.
So we need really a balancing. Yes.
Mr. Zhao, you have given some very deep thoughts to the earlier questions and also, I'm sure, to this question as well. How to protect? That is a big question, always.
Yes. If the many research have proved, if you protect animals through captive breeding, the cost is very high, and in the end of the day, you are not sure if they can be protected, they can be released to the wild. And also from animal welfare point of views, when animals kept in captive situations, they are not happy, they are distressed. So if we see them as a whole, under the whole environment, and we do more public education, let all people know all wild animals has their own values, not some are more superior than others. They have the equal value, and we protect the whole environment. It would be benefit animals, benefit environment, and benefit human beings. Right. That would be a win-win-win approach, I would argue.
I guess we need to have, as we should, the equal love for all kinds of animals around us, because they are our equal partners in nature. Thank you so much, Zhao Zhonghua, Zhu Chunshan, and also Andrew Wester. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for being with us, and all the best to the giant panda and many other wild animals around the world. That is all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more of a program, visit our website. Just type in World Insight CCTV News into your search engine, or you can also check out our YouTube channel. From me, Tian Wei, and everyone on the World Insight team, thanks for watching, and tune in again tomorrow for more insights from across China and around the world. Good night.